tonight, but we'll be free to have this conversation with our neighbors. And this is especially what this educational forum is all about to get us more comfortable with our topics. And tonight we have great panelists. First, we'll have none other than Senator Donna Scott-Mottley. We have with us, and right here, Karen Wilson, Robinson Squire, Tashany Brown, and Sujae, who will be coming on a little later. But because one of our sector is faith-based, we always start our forum with a prayer in order to make sure that we still honor to that. And tonight I'll ask none other than our moderator, Donovan Longmore, to start us off in prayer. Donovan, you have the floor.
Thank you, Michelle. Let us pray. Gracious and eternal Father, Lord God, we humbly come before you again, glorifying your name and giving you thanks for all the things that you've done. We thank you for our gathering here tonight, dear Lord, and we ask that you meet us to be in our midst, dear Father God. Let our hearts and minds be in one accord as we, dear Father God, to talk about our constitutional reform. We pray, Father God, that you may guide us in every aspect of our life. Touch Jamaica, dear Father God. Keep us free from evil powers, dear Father God, and just lead us, dear Father God. Bless all the leaders in the country, dear Father God. Bless everyone here in the diaspora and throughout. As we come, dear Father God, we humbly ask that you may continue, dear Father God, to lift us up and let your Holy Spirit lead, guide, and protect us daily. Bless every family that's gathered here tonight, dear God, and we pray that you may continue, dear Father God, to keep us close knit, so that we may continue to do the things that we need to do for our country and our people. As we go forward, we pray that you may continue, dear Father God, to let your Holy Spirit lead, guide, and protect us each and every day. As we give you thanks and ask these blessings in Jesus' mighty name, we pray. Amen.
Thank you very much, Donovan, for that. The order for tonight is that each speaker will have 5 to 7 minutes to speak. That will be followed by proposed questions. We will also take questions from the chat room. So if you have a question as they go along, please put it in the chat. We'll read that later. We will allow all speakers to talk for either 5 to 7 minutes, and then we'll take it from there. Our moderator tonight will be none other than Donovan Longmore. And so, for those who don't know him, let me introduce him to our listening audience tonight. And this is how Donovan Longmore's bio reads. Donovan Longmore is an avid entrepreneur with over 36 years of leadership experience in the entertainment, finance, and healthcare industries. Born and raised in Montego Bay, Jamaica, and migrated to the US in the early 1980s. He carried with him a vision of making Jamaica a better place for all and the passion for making a positive impact in his community. Realizing this lack of Caribbean presence in his community, he, be- he became an on-air radio personality in 1988. The opportunities enabled him to host, market, and promote forums and programs throughout the United States and the Caribbean. His devotion to help others in the Caribbean diaspora has inspired him to be an active advocate for numerous causes in the West Indian spectrum. He is a representative for the state of Connecticut Northeast region of the Jamaica Diaspora Council and served on several task forces: education, crime prevention, agriculture, child development, faith-based, scouting, and health. He is the VP of Marketing and Public Relations of Community Tourism in Jamaica. His leadership as a humanitarian and media personality was recognized by various states, to which he was honored with numerous awards, such as 100 Men of Color and Presidential Life Achievement Award, a loving and devoted husband, father, mentor, tutor, speaker, and basketball coach. He credits his blessings to God and then family. He hosts a television series, Long Talks, and a radio program entitled Reggae Voyage, Saturdays at 8 p.m. on WESU 88.1 FM. And this is also rebroadcast on Tuesdays at 5:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Fresh FM Radio London.com. And he's also the CEO of Reggae University site. Both him and his wife Jackie formed the T&J Longmore Foundation, specifically to help needy children in Jamaica and Africa. His love for pageants and fashion shows spurred him to be the host of the annual Miss Plus Size Universe International pageant. He is a volunteer cook at the Bloomfield Congregational Church, where he helps serve food to the community. Donovan does it all. So just please help us welcome tonight's host and moderator, sorry, Donovan Longmore. Welcome, Donovan. Any few words before we start off?
Well, thank you very much. Glad to be here to see my great country of Jamaica and throughout the world, people who are willing to do things. As you guys know, things are happening in Jamaica at a very fast pace. Some need to be fixed, and one that was a big discussion was this here constitutional reform. So I'm glad to be here and hopefully to learn and to see what others have to say about the whole issue. So thank you very much for having me.
Okay. Thank you very much. So the order of tonight's speaker would be Senator Donna Scott-Mottley first, will be up. Now followed by Tashany Brown, then Karen Wilson Robinson, and last would be Sujae Boswell. And so I'll take this moment now to just read a few bits about Senator Donna Scott-Mottley. Not that you don't know who she is. She doesn't really need an introduction because you know all about her. Well, welcome nevertheless, Senator. And your bio reads, Mrs. Donna Scott-Mottley is proud to be a past student of Clarendon College and a former head girl of that institution, where she was also the first recipient of the prestigious Student of the Year award. She graduated from the Norman Manley Law School with honors and is admitted to both the Jamaican and Barbadian bar. She is the founder of law firm of Scott, Morris Singh and Bonnick Attorneys at Law, with offices at Portmore, Kingston, and Maypen. Mrs. Scott-Mottley is highly skilled in litigation. In 2007, she was recipient of the prestigious Musgrave Medal for Distinguished Service in Development of Culture through Legal Skills. She has served the country in various capacities, including as president of the Southern Bar Association of Jamaica. She chaired the Sugar Company Holdings of Jamaica Limited, the enterprise management team for Milk River and Bad Fountain, was deputy chairman of the Private Security Regulation Authority, and a commissioner on the Financial Services Commission, and a director of Development Bank of Jamaica. She served on the General Legal Council for many years and chaired the Continuing Legal Development Committee, which introduced continuing legal development in Jamaica. She also chaired the Accreditation Committee as well. Ms. Scottley has a passion to uplift people's lives through personal and national development, and she has been appointed to the Senate of Jamaica under three different leaders of the People's National Party. Her first appointment was in 1989, where she first served as Deputy President of the Senate and was later appointed to government as Parliamentary Secretary for Culture, where she was instrumental in the passing of the Copyright Act. Her second appointment was in 2005. Please put your hands together and help me welcome Mrs. Donna Scott-Mottley, Senator Donna Scott-Mottley. Thank you very much for taking time out of your busy schedule to spend 2 hours with us here in the diaspora on a lovely Thursday night. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Chair. And I want to just acknowledge all the persons who are present as well and who will be sharing their thoughts, especially to the moderator, Donovan Longmore. What a distinguished career you have. I can assure you, though, that I did not supply this bio. I think she got it off the internet because I'm usually quite modest about my own achievements. But I'm delighted to be here sharing with you in the diaspora. And I want to thank you for thinking of this forum where we could discuss very freely what is happening in Jamaica. It is so important to have the engagement of the people in the diaspora because they play such a significant role in our country, not just in our economy, but in the kind of support which we do get from them in various fields. And Donovan, I was particularly touched about the work that you do with children, both here in Jamaica and Africa. So, Michelle, I will be trying to remember that I only have 5 minutes. It's very difficult for an attorney who is also a serving politician to be conscious of time, but I will try to do that. And as I'm the first speaker, what I wanted to do was to give you an overview, a background to this very long road to becoming a republic. And I say a long road because we embarked on this path as far back as 1975 when Michael Manley was Prime Minister of Jamaica and I was at high school. He determined that we should become a republic. And in 1977, he established a constitutional reform
Recording in progress.
Ministry of Justice. And that is when my involvement with constitutional reform actually started, because I was so excited about the thought that I was one of those who went from classroom to classroom, church hall to church hall, just listening to the people and getting their views. Well, the aspiration that Michael had was that we would become a republic by 1980, 1981. And so you can count and know how many years ago that was. I think, though, that the most defining period which we had was when the Joint Select Committee was established in 1993 and reported in 1995. And I just want to share with you some of the thoughts that they had. And in order to do so, I have to go back to when Jamaica actually became independent in 1962. Because in October 1961, when the then leaders were contemplating the future of Jamaica and Jamaica becoming independent, it was not that people were not proposing that we become a republic at the same time. We had precedent in the Commonwealth because we had India and Ghana, which had become a republic and had a president. And there were people who were saying, let's become a republic at the same time as we gain independence. But the leaders at that time would not have it. And I think that there was a certain kind of comfort in the Westminster model, in the parliamentary democracy. They felt that it would guarantee stability. It was a system with which we were totally familiar, and therefore they would not want to take the risk of becoming a republic. Indeed, they expressed a view that in terms of nationhood, they could see no difference between becoming having the head of state as a president or having the governor general as a representative of the Queen. So in 1995, when the committee, Joint Select Committee reported, they totally disagreed with that view. And they felt that Jamaica should become a republic with its own head of state. Now, it's very interesting because some of the observations which they made then are the same observations which we are making now. There was disagreement about whether we should have a ceremonial president or we should have an executive president. And the ceremonial president, some people felt, would just be replacing the governor general with a similar person with a different name. And that was rejected by some. The People's National Party, of which I'm a member at that time, wanted an executive president. They wanted to vote for the president. But it was very important then, as it is now, that we have some kind of consensus going forward. And so the People's National Party conceded and agreed with the Jamaica Labour Party that we would have a non-executive president. And I say a non-executive president because I think it's important to emphasize that the role of the president as we conceive of it, and indeed the role of the governor general as it presently exists, is not just to cut ribbons and open parliament and do the throne speech. He does have significant functions which he has to carry out. And what is being perceived is that a non-executive president would have even more expanded powers. So when we had in 2022, again, the Prime Minister of Jamaica, Andrew Holness, decided that we were again going to try to have constitutional reform and we were going to try and become a republic. But this time there was a ministry actually established which was devoted to that purpose. So we had the Ministry of Constitutional Reform and Constitutional Affairs and Constitutional Reform and Legal Affairs, headed by the Minister Marlene Ford. And as a result of that, the Constitutional Reform Commission was established. I am a member, and Sujae, who will join shortly, is also a member. Now, this committee has a particular remit, and I think it's important that I tell you how the government of this day perceives of what we're going to do. So, this government has decided to phase the reform. So, we are actually now discussing the first phase. And the first phase, as they said, is the repatriation of the Constitution of Jamaica, abolition of the constitutional monarchy, establishment of the Republic of Jamaica, and all matters within the deeply entrenched provisions of the Constitution for which a referendum is required to amend. And if I just, before I stop, Chair, if I can just tell you what this means. This means that the bill which establishes the new Constitution of Jamaica has to go through a particular process. And that process includes and involves tabling the bill and laying it on the table of Parliament for 3 months before it can be debated. So all during that time, no discussion can take place. After it is laid on the table of Parliament for 3 months, then the next thing that happens is that it is debated. And after the debate, in which you can expect it to be quite lengthy, because this is significant, it is historical, every 63, all 63 parliamentarians will want to participate so that their name can go on the record. It has to lay on the table for another 3 months before it is sent to the Senate. It goes to the Senate, and after the Senate debates it, then it has to come back to the House, and then the House sets the date for the referendum. And that is where the people get to vote. Because the people have to approve this change from being a monarchy to being a republic. They get a chance to say. So in a nutshell, that is what we have embarked upon. We have 3 phases. We are in the first phase. We are going to consider all the referendum items. And for you in the diaspora, you should be interested in knowing that one of the deeply entrenched clauses is who gets to sit in the Parliament or in the Senate. And curiously, the Constitution says you have to be a Commonwealth citizen, not a Jamaican. It doesn't say you have to be a Jamaican. It says you have to be a Commonwealth citizen, which means that somebody from Rwanda can qualify, can come here to Jamaica and run for office to be a member of Parliament and can be elected or selected to be a senator. So one of the things that we know we want to change, and we believe that the people of Jamaica will agree to, is a requirement that you have to be a Jamaican rather than a Commonwealth citizen. So those are my introductory remarks, and I'm sure that as we go along through your questions, I'll get an opportunity to elaborate.
Thank you very much, Senator. That was really good information. I am learning stuff that I didn't even know. So thank you so much. I just want to let everybody know that Make Me Talk with Jeffrey Faris is actually streaming live, and you can find us on YouTube channel and Facebook at this time. I would also acknowledge Barbara Wilson, the Northeast State Chair for Pennsylvania. I saw Claudette Powell, who's the Sector Chair for Health. I saw Stafford Grant, Sector Chair for, I did see him as well. I think I saw him here for Security. And I did see Michael Campbell as well, State Chair for Virginia and West Virginia. Welcome. And our next speaker will be none other than Tashany Brown. And give me a second. Let me introduce this lady to each and every one of us. Tashany Brown, an intellectual luminary and catalyst for societal transformation, holds a Master in Public Administration Policy from Rutgers University. As an adjunct professor of government and political science, Tashany Brown transcends the conventional boundaries of academia, seamlessly intertwining theory and practice to cultivate the minds of future leaders. At the helm of the Du Bois Bocce Center in Brooklyn, Tashany assumes the role of assistant director, orchestrating a symphony of community development and social progress, contributing to the center's mission of fostering community engagement, research, and social impact. This role allows Tashany to bridge the gap between theory and practice, bringing academic insights into real world initiatives. This multifaceted position demands a keen intellect and unwavering commitment to the betterment of society, qualities Ms. Brown effortlessly embodies. Tashani emerges as a visionary in the entrepreneurial arena, navigating the complex landscape with a keen sense of innovation and purpose. A nonprofit founder, Tashani pioneers initiatives that testify to her, to her unwavering dedication to positive change, grounded in a profound understanding of public administration. Tashani crafts and executes strategies that resonate with both efficacy and impact. The confluence of academia, community leadership, and entrepreneurial acumen defines Tashani as a striving force to redline social progress, a masterful architect of change. Tashani exemplifies this title. And with that in mind, please welcome Tashani Brown. Tashani, welcome.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me. Thank you for the people in Diaspora for tuning in. This is actually a very important conversation of which I am very happy to be a part of. Great. So, um, you when you go behind someone that is so intellectual as our senator, you know you have to come good. But I do want to say that as a member of the diaspora, I think that this conversation is very important. And the reason why I think it is important, even though we're abroad, we do play an integral role in, forming our country's democracy. And so for me, when I think about the process of the constitutional reform, what I think about is basically having a process where we involve public consultation, right? Wanting to know what the public thinks, maybe basically having forums, seminars, and so on, and just kind of town hall and civic engagement um, opportunities where the public can play a part in shaping what the constitution looks like. When we talk about the constitution is actually a very important framework of a country's government, how it politicizes people, how it governs its people, and so on. And so having the people being important stakeholders in this is actually very important. We want to make sure that when it comes to legislative approval and referendum and so on, the people's voice is being heard, right? The review and evaluation, we want to make sure that we have periodic review. We want to have make sure that we have mechanisms that are established to assess the impact and the effectiveness of the constitutional reform over time. Like the senator said, first, we had it in 1962, which after doing my research, not much public involvement was there. It was done in the UK, of course, at the time, and it was just kind of quickly put together. It's like, okay, Jamaica wants to have their own government. Let's do something. But if we look at the US Constitution, we look at the fact that when it was formed by colonists. The colonists are people, right? These are people who wanted to be independent of the UK, and so they play a part in how they want their government to look like. They probably want better taxes. They want to have a say in how property is being evaluated, the protection of property, human rights, and so on. And so when we think about the Constitution, we think about the people, right? The people actually benefits from the Constitution. So not having the people as a part of it is not really a good thing. Also, when I look at it, we have 15 people right now that is a part of the committee, and they're all attorneys, right? I'm sorry, you wanted to say something, Miss Motley?
I'm sorry. I was just saying, not really.
Really
I was
what?
disagreeing with you.
No, go ahead.
No, I was saying that they're not all attorneys, but Sujae.
No. That's what I'm saying. 11 of the 15 are attorneys, right? 11 of the 15 are attorneys, which majority of the people are attorneys. We want to make sure that when we are doing this process, we have a diverse group of people. We want to have people who are scholars, of course. We want to have regular general public people. Of course, you're going to have members of legislature and so on, but you don't want to make sure, because when you're thinking about attorneys on a forum that is all 11 of the 15, I stand corrected. These are people who are going to be coming with legal jargon, right? Legal wording and so on. That doesn't necessarily, it's not intimate, it's not familiar, it's not personal. When you have other people on the forum that can come to you and say, okay, this is what I want my government to look like. The people who are going to be giving examples of maybe human rights issues, how they've been affected. And so, with that being said, we can now make it a little bit more personal. Of course, we're going to use public opinion. Of course, we're going to gauge public opinion. We're going to hear what the public is saying, what they want to see. We have social media that will be playing an integral role in that and so on. But this is a long night, and there's more to be said. So I'm not going to take over the conversation. But that's right now. For right now, that's my views and what I would want to see the Constitution look like.
Okay, thank you very much for that. I can see this is going to be a wonderful conversation tonight. So our next speaker would be none other than Karen and Wilson Robinson. Welcome, Karen. And Karen Wilson is an experienced litigator who honed her skill at several big law firms before transitioning to private practice. Her practice is focused on general litigation, corporate formation, trademark prosecution and litigation, patent prosecution and litigation, intellectual property counseling, and copyright registration and litigation. Karen is a member of the New York and New Jersey Bar, the Eastern and Southern District of New York, and the District of New Jersey, and licensed to practice before the United States Patent and Trademark Office. Karen has a Bachelor of Science degree in biology from St. Francis College and a JD from Pennsylvania State University. Karen is a member of the New York City Bar Association and sits on the patent committee where she teaches patent litigation to law clerks for several judges throughout the United States. Karen has successfully completed the course of practice in the Caribbean and is currently pursuing being called to the Jamaica Bar. With that being said, let us welcome Karen and Wilson Robinson Esquire as our third presenter for tonight. Karen, welcome. And if one word I know for sure after reading it is the word litigation. Welcome, Karen.
The risk of having another attorney on the panel, but I want to, again, as the young lady said before, going behind the senator is kind of difficult. So I think I'll straddle what the senator has said and what Ms. Brown has said and kind of take it back a little. I'm not sure if everyone here understand what the Constitution is. It was one of the toughest classes for me in law school. So I kind of want to just go back and discuss what the Constitution is and why it is so important and why we can't simply just become or get rid of the monarchy and become a republic. And we have to go through this whole process. So really, what is the Constitution? It's the supreme law of the land, and it provides the framework or for the legitimate exercise of governmental power. Simply, it's a document or the law from which the powers of the various arms of the government are derived and where the rights of the citizens are guaranteed. For example, the freedoms, the right to privileges, etc. And really, what does it do? It establishes the institutions of government, right? The executive, legislature, judiciary, who will be those officers of those institutions, how they'll be selected, how they operate, what their functions are. It clarifies where sovereignty lies, and that's the whole purpose of today's discussion. Jamaica is a constitutional monarchy, and where the executive authority is vested in the king now, the queen ever since we were gained our independence. And the king is represented by the governor general, which is primarily a ceremonial role, as the senator mentioned, but they have other functions, but they're kind of seen as they're representative of the king. And the true power is exercised by the prime minister and his cabinet. Another thing that we get from the Constitution, it balances the rights of our people and the interest of the majority. It basically imposes the limitations of the government and provides some modicum of protection from governmental misconduct, which you would see in, I guess, the Charter of Fundamental Rights, which, from what I understand, was an amendment to the Charter, Chapter 3 of the Constitution, which began in about 1991 to 1995 when the recommendations were tabled, and it took several amendments before it was finally approved in 2011. So hopefully this whole reform will not take such a long period as that major amendment to the Constitution. Another function of a constitution is that it basically articulates or reflects the society's core values and commitments. And this is where reform is most likely to arise as the norms of a society changes over time. You know, human rights and those norms are typically reflected in your constitution, and you know we don't remain stagnant. Our mores, our values, while you know we'll have basic tenets, there will be some changes as to what the society as a whole wants to see. You know, basically our human rights, etc., typically expressed in our constitution. So the senator mentioned that there's a couple of phases to the constitutional reform, and the first phase, of course, is the abolition of the monarchy and establishing our Jamaica as a republic. But then there are other phases will look at the entrenched provisions of the Constitution, you know, similar to the Charter of Fundamental Rights, and that amended the Constitution previously. And I believe, as my understanding, there'll also be an assessment in the third phase of the nation's legal and constitutional infrastructure to facilitate putting together a new constitution. So it's a huge undertaking, and it's necessary because that's the only way you can effect change. Change for our government, change for our society as a whole. I think one issue that I would think should be first and foremost to our citizens is whether the reform will simply replace the monarchy with the same, I would say, top-down type of governance that we currently have with an executive sovereignty, or if the reform will create a bottom-up type of governance where the representatives of the branch of government are elected by the people, for the people, similar to what you have here in the United States. Therefore, similar to what Ms. Brown said, transparency is important in order to have an input from the public so that they know how the reform is being accomplished. They know what structure is being suggested to be implemented, and they can weigh in on what it is that they would like to see, or the shape that they would like to see the constitutional reform take. Similar, one concern I have is, again, with what the senator mentioned, is that as a citizen of another country but born of Jamaica, we do not have the same latitude that a Commonwealth citizen would have. So that would be a change that we as members of the diaspora should be vastly vested in, because there's all a cry about whether or not we can vote in elections or whether or not we can do all these things that we want to do, given that we have such an economic impact on the country. Well, the only way to do that is to change the constitution to allow for the participation of the diaspora. So that's my thoughts. Hopefully that's helpful. And you know, I'm happy to answer questions when the time arises.
All right. Thank you very much, Karen. Thank you, thank you. And before we go on to our last speaker of today, Sujae, I just want to acknowledge a few people that's here with us tonight and thank them for coming on. Reverend Chris Nielsen, who is the sector chair for the faith-based community. Rookie Wilson, State Chair for DBC. I see Dr. Claire Nelson as well. I see Asher Richards, who is the Global Jamaica Diaspora Youth Council rep for the Northeast. I see Andrew Sharp, Northeast State rep for Massachusetts. Thank you. I see one of my favorite, Carmita Alvarez, is here online. Beverly Jula, welcome. And co-chairs from Team Jamaica, Victor Philadelphia, Vincent E. and Purvis Morrison. Welcome to tonight's forum. And with that said, we'll have Sujae. He said he's online. Sujae, you have the floor. Welcome.
Hi, good evening.
Evening.
Yes, let me firstly say congratulations to the Jamaica Diaspora Northeast USA chapter, as well as the Global Jamaica Diaspora Youth Council in the Northeast USA for organizing this critical conversation among the diaspora members on constitutional reform. This really reflects a proactive approach to engaging community voices in this period of transformative action. And as we explore the implications and opportunities presented by Jamaica's move towards becoming a republic, more conversations like these are necessary. And so again, I just want to say congratulations to the organizing team. So I think Senator Motley would have done an excellent job in laying the groundwork as to what we're doing as a constitutional reform committee. I just wanted to add some more perspective to that we engage the public to get their views. So yes, we have received the feedback, very important feedback about the structure and organization of the committee. And so in our own workings with the creation of subcommittees, those members that we speak to, people who have a social background, who view things from a different perspective, not only from a legal perspective, those persons are engaged within the workings of the subcommittee. Of course, given the work is quite legal and with the heavy legal jargon that is there now, it can be quite clear as to why the composition of the committee is in the way that it is, as it is now. But the work is, of course, garnering the support of those persons from the other sectors that have been mentioned. We listen to the recommendations of the public. We've been having conversations across the country. We've been having town halls across the country, and we've been getting feedback, some very critical feedback, as a matter of fact, from members of the society. And so it is not a case, and this is something that we have to be very mindful of. The committee does not make decisions. We make recommendations. And so when we speak of what the work of the committee is, we are not a decision-making body, but a body that gets the views, have the dialogue with the people, synthesize the feedback that we get from the people, and then make actionable recommendations to the members of the government who will have to lead on this process of constitutional reform. So that is quite important. As was mentioned by Senator Motley and the speakers before, the work of the Constitutional Reform Committee is being phased. So there are 3 phases, as was mentioned. In this first phase, we're really looking critically at the matter of our form of government. And as it is now, our form of government is a constitutional monarchy. And so we are seeking to move away from that particular system and to move towards becoming a republic. Now, there are some important steps that are needed in moving towards becoming a republic. One, it requires the parliament to have a vote on it, as it is a deeply entrenched provision. And so with the parliament, they will have to take a vote. Then the people have to take a vote. So the critical stakeholders in this will be both the parliament as well as the people, because both steps are required as laid out in our constitution to move forward. But before, I just want you to really imagine, it is like having a family conversation about a chair that we've been thinking about moving on for some time. And you meet to talk and we say, boy, we don't like the chair. But for some reason, we still manage to have that chair in our living room. And that is really what this journey on this particular matter in our constitutional reform has been like. In the 1960s, we had an independent country. But if you look at it, when we moved towards becoming an independent country, countries like Guyana would have become a cooperative republic in 1970. Trinidad and Tobago would have become a republic in 1976. Dominica in 1978, when they would have gotten their independence, they would have become a republic in that very same year. So from the 1950s to the 1960s, we've been having these conversations. Throughout the 1970s and the 1990s, the conversation came back up, but then it simmered down back on the back burner. And we've been talking about it during successive governments, during successive tenures, about moving towards becoming a republic, but no concrete action has been taken. So as Senator Motley said, she was a part of the conversation. She was doing what I am doing now in terms of the youth engagement. In 1991, we kind of reached a peak, and that peak saw the formation of a joint select committee on constitutional electoral reform. And their job was really to review Jamaica's independence constitution and suggest the potential reforms that needed to take place. So the committee submitted reports in both 1993 as well as in 1994. But again, nothing much happened with those reports until it was tabled in 1995 in Parliament. In 2000s, the discussions continued and they gained some momentum. There are a number of committees and commissions that were again looked at to look at that particular issue. But again, the old chair is still present in that living room. In the 2000s, the conversations came up again, 2010. Right in 2015, another commission was set up to review. Conversations continued, and here we are in 2023, November 2023, moving towards 2024, and we're still having that very same conversation on moving away from a constitutional monarchy towards becoming a republic. So we must assess and ask ourselves what has been stopping us and what will it take to move forward. And I say this with it in mind that we did a poll recently of young people in partnership with U Report Jamaica. 71% of the youth who participated in that poll, of 536 persons being polled, 71% of them said that they believed that Jamaica should become a republic. 13% said no. 16% said not sure. So we can look at it, we can assess, we can deliberate, we can have conversations on it. But when will we take meaningful action? And I think that this is what this committee is trying to do. And I've said it in our conversations at the meeting. And critically, it is not lost on us that the people have a very fundamental role to play in this process. And there's a number of reasons. Jamaica enjoys a representative democracy. It means, therefore, that the people are the ones who elect a representative, being the member of parliament, and that member of parliament is the one who goes to parliament to make the laws and to make representation on behalf of the people. With that representative democracy, it means that the people are not necessarily involved in the day-to-day activities and actions of the parliament. And so it is left to their representatives. With this reform that is being proposed, it requires a referendum. The last time Jamaica had a referendum was in 1961. I was not born in. And so when you're going to be asking the people to vote on something, it means that their education and their awareness levels have to be raised. So we have been on the road, we have been having the conversations, again, with much criticism, and it is welcome criticism. I don't think that we shy away from it. If you read the minutes, it will reflect that internally, based on the engagements that we've been having, what the people are saying is quite reflected within our meetings. Because, again, and personally, even though I am the youth advisor on the committee, I don't believe that I am a sole youth voice on the matters of the Constitution. And so the engagements, based on the engagements, it is reflected in the conversations. The Constitution is the foundation of our nation's governance. And so it is important that when we have these conversations with the people, what they're saying reflects in what we're doing. And as it relates to youth participation, to have a process like this without youth engagement, without youth participation, without the deliberations of the young people, that would be antithetical to any form of progress. And so engaging youth will be critical as we try to get a vibrant democracy moving. So we have set up a number of platforms. We have a WhatsApp line where the public can submit their ideas, their thoughts, their suggestions, their recommendations to the committee. That is 876-441-9097. That is our WhatsApp line that we use to engage the public. We have an Instagram page, we have a Twitter page, we have an email address that we've set up. So persons can feed into the process. We've been having persons present to the committee to make the matters that they believe are relevant to the committee. And albeit we have set up in a way where it is phased, but we have welcomed matters that were not necessarily a part of the first phase that we would have set out on. And we've been hearing those matters as we deliberate the matters are relating to phase one. So all in all, we're doing this process in a way to ensure that the voices and the views of the people are reflected in this process. We would have had a number of conversations locally. I've been to several of the parishes locally. The committee has gone out to many of the parishes. And so the work of the committee continues as we look towards becoming a republic. And that is my opening line. Thank you very much.
Can I have Mr. Boswell a question?
Give me 1 minute, Tashany. You hold that thought for now. But thank you, Sujae, for just coming on and expressing the youth voice. And we're happy to know that in this process, the youth is also involved. So thank you so much for taking time out. Just a friendly reminder that Make Me Talk, Jeffrey Tavares is on YouTube channel and Facebook right now streaming. And I would like to also give a hello to Michelle Tingling. She's the sector chair for Arts, Sports, and Culture. And Donna Bailey, I saw him at some point in time. Welcome. Please remember to put your questions in the chat room. After Donovan goes, he's going to take over now and have some pointing questions for you. And Tashany, you get up to ask your questions, so make sure you write it down, and we'll keep this flowing for the rest of the evening. So without further ado, Donovan, please take over.
Thank you very much, Michelle. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for that wonderful introduction that you guys gave. And it was, I'm here right now, note, because it's so informative. First question. And all of you guys spoke about various issues. But my question is, what are the key issues or problems that exist right now in the Jamaican Constitution that led to this being a new reform that's needed? And anyone you can answer.
Okay, I'll go ahead. So some of the key issues that people are having are human rights protection. There are advocate groups and general public that seek to want to see more strengthening of human rights protection. They want to clarify these provisions and so on, which was going to be my question to Mr. Boswell. When it comes to issues like human rights protection, and I really love his explanation and so on, we do want, I'm going to re-emphasize that we do want to have the public involved, private sector people as well. We want to have trade unions. We want to have teachers. We want to have nurses, people who deal with day-to-day human rights issues on a regular. We want to have these people, as he said, they don't make the final decision, they make recommendations. So if they're going to make recommendations, these people can also be on the committee, right, to make these recommendations as well. These are people who deal with the general public on a regular. So that's just my viewpoint. Another problem that people have, the issue with the Constitution, is government structure. There are discussions about the balance of powers between, the different branches of government and so on, and that is one of the reasons why people are calling for reform, and they want to enhance accountability, and as I mentioned earlier, transparency. The electoral system is another issue. People are advocating for changes to the electoral system to ensure that there's more representational government and not just, it being said that there's representation government. We want to see government that look like themselves, right? And more effective governance. And I could go on and on, but I know this I'm not the only one who needs to answer the question.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, Tashany, you did a wonderful job. All right, let me go to the next question. I heard Senator Motley talked about all the parliamentarians being involved, and I heard Sanjay talked about the committee. Now, who are the main stakeholders in the constitutional reform process in Jamaica? Is it the government, the three parliamentarian committee? Who are the main stakeholders in this?
Well, I think I would like to answer that one, Donna, because it is clear to me from the perspective that I have and where I sit that in this exercise, it is the people who are the main stakeholders. And that is why the committee has been interacting with the public. We've had town hall meetings, people, different entities have requested to make submissions to the committee, and they have done so. And we invite the greatest participation possible. The ministry even has an Instagram page where you will see that someone has gone around and interviewed people. Sujae has done a brilliant job with engaging the young people. And the thing that pleases me about this process is the deep desire which has been revealed that the people have to be part of the process. And even here, as I said earlier, the diaspora engagement signifies the desire of every Jamaican to want to have a say. Now, let's be clear. The committee, we could have had 100 people on the committee, different representative groups. It would not have been possible. The government decided how they wish the committee to be constituted. And I apologize for the fact that the opposition had
It's 8 o'clock.
Option of selecting 2 members, and just quite coincidentally, they happen to be attorneys. That is myself and Anthony Hilton. The government had the option of selecting 2 nominees, and coincidentally, they happen to be 2 attorneys: the president of the Senate, who sits on the Electoral Commission, and Senator Ransford Graham. And I think it's because attorneys tend to wear so many different hats, because even David Henry, who is an attorney, is really a pastor. He practices as a pastor, not as an attorney. And Lalita David Mattis is actually chair of the reparations committee in the ministry. So that is her main task. She's not there as an attorney. But I go back to my original point. These changes call for a referendum. And so the people have to speak. And if the people do not understand what they are speaking about, are not engaged, and are not involved in the process, they will refuse to speak. So they are the greatest stakeholders, in short.
Thank you. Anybody else want to answer? Michelle, I saw 2 hands up. You want me to go to the next question, or?
I just wanted to add, Donovan, to what Senator Motley has said. I think she's given it very, very clearly as it relates to the people, but I think she's not giving herself as well as the other members of the government and opposition prior to this process, because it sets key stakeholders. And the truth is, as I would have mentioned before, the members of parliament will have to vote on these changes as well. So yes, the people are the key centerpiece of this, but the members of parliament do have a role to play in any actualization of this process.
And to move to the next question, you just made a very good point. Exactly what are the roles of members of parliament?
Well, Donovan, the way in which the Constitution was actually formulated at the time when we became independent, it had put in place some very complex structures. And one of the things is that it protected what we call deeply entrenched clauses. So in order for us to do certain things, which include leaving the monarchy, you have to have 2/3 of the parliament supporting that bill. And when I say 2/3 of the parliament, now the composition is such that now the government has an overwhelming majority in the House of Representatives. But the way that the Senate is constituted, no bill to remove a deeply entrenched clause can be passed without one opposition senator joining with the government. That was a protection which was embedded in the Constitution. So we do have a very significant role in the sense that should the Senate block it, then it won't pass immediately. But there is a process too which is contemplated in the Constitution. And so if the Senate, under certain circumstances which are set out, if the Senate does not support it, then it can still go to the people, but a higher level of persons participating will be required. So yes, the parliamentarians are the first obstacle that you have to pass in this reform.
Thank you, Senator. Anybody?
Can I take a, if not, I'll read a question.
Yeah, there are 3 hands up. Don't forget, Michelle.
I saw them too. Yeah. All right, so let me go to the first question by Dr. Claire Nelson. It says, how does constitutional reform affect human rights? Which human rights are currently impacted by the fact that we have constitutional monarchy? Again, it says, how does constitutional reform affect human rights? Which human rights are currently impacted by the fact that we have constitutional monarchy? Who would like to take that one, please? Question.
Anybody? Doesn't matter.
So the question is, how does constitutional reform affect the monarchy?
Human rights.
Human rights. Okay, so you, as was said, I think it was Tashana who was speaking to it, or Karen, I'm not sure. We had an amendment from Chapter 3, which was the Fundamental Rights and Freedoms, was replaced with the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, and that was done in 2011. And what that did was expanded the rights of the people. Interestingly, one of those that I always quarrel with is the fact that it guaranteed the right to free primary education. And I often say, but they didn't put quality in it. So it should have been free quality primary education. It guarantees the right of protection of the environment, for example. And it created a whole level of expanded rights. But the truth of it is that as we have evolved as a people, and as the world has changed, there are a number of rights, fundamental rights, which I think we have to look at. And that is supposed to be done in phase 2. So we have not really engaged with people on those rights. But I think they are critical rights, an expansion of rights. I will say that in my view, and this is my view, listening to the government wants to restrict some of the rights in terms of the freedoms that people presently enjoy. They want to do so within the context of having crime under control and having a certain type of order in the society. I am not into that. I do not believe that we should restrict people's rights. I believe we have to educate people about the responsibilities that go along with their rights, but that we have to look at an expansion of human rights. So yes, in phase 2, which I hope will follow very swiftly on phase 1, we are going to be engaging the people as to the rights which they want to see expanded in the Charter of Rights.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And I will go to the community of the deaf for the first question. We have has their hands raised. Community of the deaf. I'm not too sure who's on. Okay, community of the deaf. Yes. Okay.
That's Leonid Michelle. He is with an interpreter, so he is from the disability community. So we gotta wait until his interpreter.
Okay, all right. So I'll come back to him then. That's what you want me to do? Okay, I'll come back to him. All right, so then I'll go to Steve Golden next. Stephen Golden, please.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Good evening.
My question is, and I understand what the members of the committee have just said in terms of the process. It's really that there's parts of the Constitution that are entrenched. This is the reason why they have to go to the people. Members of Parliament amend parts of the Constitution. That's generally a part of their job. What I want to ask is, given the particular history of the Jamaican people and the history of the Jamaican Constitution too, because we've had an assembly since 1667. We're also a country coming out of colonial subjugation and out of the institutionalization of chattel slavery. So, being that we're a nation over 93% of African descent, our history as a people with the Constitution has been a very combative one, in the sense that we had a Constitution that excluded us. We had a Constitution that made laws relegating us to nothing more than property. And we've had to chip away and fight for our place in governance, right? Starting with, in the 1820s, with them allowing colored people, and then later coming up after the Morant-Day Rebellion, when the Constitution was suspended for 2 decades. Black people were allowed into the legislature. At each point along the way, as we have fought our way to self-governance, the Crown, the colonial authorities, have fixed the Constitution in a way to ensure that they still hold the reins of power. Right? We had a legislative council that the governor first appointed. We had to fight to, get the executive to be chosen from the lower house. We had an upper house that the crown first appointed, and at the point of independence, when we had a dominance of the two political parties, much of that power that the crown used to keep in check, the power of the masses over them, the political parties inherited. And so now we have an upper house that is appointed by the political party. Right? My question is, in reforming the Constitution now, are we going to continue that fight that our ancestors began to empower themselves and empower the people by fixing those things in the Constitution that still limit the power of the people? Are we going to now allow for the people to elect their members of the Senate? Are we going to allow for them to elect an executive president? And I have to ask these questions because it is not in the interest of the political parties to give this power over to the people, since they have been the guardians of it in that handing over from the colonial authorities, right? And I know we're talking about, consulting the people, but I don't know that they're going far enough in educating the people, one, about the real history of the Constitution, and two, about the fact that as Black people coming out of our particular history, our main objective every time we reform our Constitution should be to give more power to the people, because we know we have a Constitution that has been constructed to keep the power of the people in check, going back to the days when Black people weren't allowed till they were given little bit amounts. They had to pay hard, huge property tax till they were given suffrage. What in the Reformation this time is speaking to that movement of empowering the people? That's my question.
There is no
Oh,
question about the fact. I'm sorry, somebody else wanted to answer this one.
What is Karen?
I was
Oh,
just
let me allow Karen to go.
I think that's part Stephen is part of what I alluded to, and when I spoke, is that really explaining to the people what kind of structure we're looking to assume, right? Is the president going to simply be a ceremonial president where they, which a head of state that really has no authority and doesn't control any aspect of government, or are we going to have a executive president, which is one who exercises authority, similar to what we have here in the United States? Is the president simply going to replace the governor general? Those questions are important for us to understand, based upon whatever recommendations come out of the committee, because yes, that will either have us have the status quo, where we are, really don't have much say. Senator, I don't want to step on any toes, but a perception that the people don't have any say, or whether it will be the kind of governance that you have in the United States, where you do go out and vote, and if you don't go out and vote, then it sucks for you. You need to have a voice by going out and making your voice be heard, so you can think you're effecting some sort of change, or you can feel like you're having some impact on how government was run. Yes, the Constitution was based upon of Britain, because that's all we knew back then. So in 1962, when they adopted the Constitution, it was based off, as the senator said, the Westminster model that is, indicative or based upon what came out of Britain. So we have a lot of work to do. It's coming from colonialism. It's coming from colonial times. So we do have the opportunity to make those changes, and we started with the Charter of Fundamental Rights. It did in fact increase the rights of our people, and as the senator mentioned, it's going to be looked at in phase 2 of this whole process. The bigger issue right now is changing our structure of government, moving away from that monarchy, and creating an environment where it's either the people who have the say and dictate who leads the country, or are we going to maintain that indicia of the monarchy, where we have the prime minister being more ceremonial than authoritative? So that will all come out in the recommendations that we get from the committee, and clearly it will be based upon educating the public and having the input from the public as to what they want to see moving forward.
Thank you, Karen.
I want to make a brief comment, if you don't mind. And I do hope I'm not stepping on anybody's toes, like Karen. But I'm not enthralled by the kind of executive presidency which I see demonstrated in the United States. I frankly do not see how it has served, and I do not see how it has served Black people in particular. That will be my commentary on the United States, where a lot of you people live. That's where the discussion is rooted. I will say that that the People's National Party in the past has wanted to have an executive presidency and wanted people to vote for their president, because this is a very important involvement. I have taken the opportunity of looking at how the presidencies have evolved. And what I have seen does not recommend that type of presidency to me. In fact, when I look around the world, what I'm seeing is that stable democracies are really more based on a parliamentary democracy. And those countries, especially in Europe, which serve as a model, have parliamentary democracies. I want to share with you something which my research yielded about the executive presidency. And this is written by a scholar who said, the executive presidency has done a great deal of damage to our political culture simply because it's too powerful. It represents concentration of too much power in the hands of one individual and one institution. It has produced polarization in our political culture. The executive president is above the law and is not accountable to parliament, a negation of the rule of law. He's above parliament. And so if you look at where at Latin America, for example, where you have a executive presidencies, I am begging that some time be taken to look at the different models. And what I'm asking in particular from the diaspora, as somebody who would really like to see people exercise a right to choose, is to contact the committee and say how you see it functioning. Because to my mind, even though I'm somebody who supports the executive presidency, what I'm seeing is that the whole infrastructure and architecture of our government would have to change. And I will confess to everybody who is on the line, I want to see this happen before I die. I really would like to see us sever our ties with the monarchy, not just in terms of being the head of state, but in terms of the Privy Council being our final court of appeal. I want to see the process of decolonization being completed. And Stephen is right. Even though we say that we are independent, we are still trapped. We are still trapped in the whole process, the whole experience. So that even though we say we have universal suffrage, we have less and less people participating in elections. That is a blow to democracy. So we have to find a way to educate our people. These engagements, such as the one we are having this evening, are of fundamental and critical importance because we need to let our people understand the power that they have and what their voice can mean for a different nation. I am seeing this republic and voting to changes as a new opportunity to give birth to a new Jamaica. That is what I am seeing.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And I'm just going to ask everybody to really be patient. The questions are coming in. Donovan has his question. The hands are up. But we'll definitely try to get to all of them. And the reason why I'm going to Robert Jackson, I just want to make sure we answered his question because I think we did, and it asked, will the vote of the people include whether the president is an executive president or figurehead president? And I believe that question has been answered. Mr. Jackson, was that answer to your liking, or do you want us to get a little bit deeper?
Yeah, I'm not sure if the answer just answered in the manner that I was expecting, because I was trying to figure out if that decision would have been made by or recommended by the committee and voted by the parliament before it gets to the people. That's what I wasn't sure about. So were able to vote on it, or is something that the parliament would decide before it gets to the people for the final vote on whether or not it's going to be a republic or not. So that's what I was trying to understand.
Okay. Can somebody answer that for me, please? Will the vote of the people include by the president, executive president, or a figurehead? Will the people be a part of that, Senator?
No. So when the bill is tabled, the bill will have to have certain inputs. So the bill will have to say, for example, what type of president, what are the qualifications to become a president, and what are the roles and duties of the president. So that decision will have to be made prior to. I want to remind you that the committee does not make any decisions, but it makes recommendations. And the committee has heard from many, many people as to how they view it. Michelle, let me confess to you. When I ask people, what exactly is it? How do you view this executive presidency working? What I hear is a cry for more accountability from our leaders. And I would say to them, but you can hold your leaders accountable at present. It's just that you choose not to. You wait for every 5 years to decide whether you want to vote them out or you want to vote them in. But there are processes which we presently have, which people just do not explore. We just have, I sit on quite a few joint select committees where very significant bills are debated. And it's after the decisions are made that you hear the public input. And I'm imploring them to realize that there are many avenues which are presently available in which their voice can be heard. I want to see a constitution that reflects the people. I want to see a constitution which makes us better Jamaicans, which guides us as to how we ought to be as a nation. And I feel that this is really an opportunity. And one of the things that is being thought of and was recommended by the Joint Select Committee is that we should have a preamble. And the preamble should set out our aspirations as a people, what it is that we want to be, who is it that we want a Jamaican to be, how is it that we want to see our nation. So I think, this discussion has to continue as to whether we are going to have an executive presidency or we're going to have greater accountability. But let me say, Stephen, that one of the recommendations that was made by the Joint Select Committee is that we should vote for senators. And I think that is also on the table. Again, an expanded Senate where people vote for the senators.
I want to just expand on that a little. I mean, it's a little bit conflicting. The thing with the executive presidency is that it gives accountability, right? You will be able to have someone that there's checks and balances. I know the senator does not like the US system. That's what I teach. But with checks and balances, you're able to check your government. You're able to have some type of accountability where people don't just get to do whatever they want, right? When we have stuff like crisis management during times of crisis, you'll probably have that single leader with executive powers that will be able to facilitate, a more coordinated and efficient process. It also prevents, gridlock. What does that mean? When there are executive presidencies, you will have mechanisms in place which can overcome legislative gridlock where people are trying to fight in parliament about a particular law. That person could use their executive powers. At the same time, the success of an executive presidency often hinges on a well-crafted constitution, right? So the constitution has to be crafted properly, which allows democratic principles to take place. And with that being said, I'm going to edge back onto what I said earlier. We still have to have different members of the private sector and public sector be involved in what our constitution is going to look like for us to have a really great process, to streamline the process, to make it easy and so on. But an executive presidency, there are a lot of pros and there are a lot of cons, but there are more pros than cons. That's 8:25 here. I don't know what time it is in Jamaica. I can't, go on and on about it. But there are more pros than cons. There's national unity that can be considered. There's direct mandate from the people. The people will feel like they're more involved because this is their president that they elected.
If I can just respond quickly since I had asked a question. No, what worries me is that anytime I engage this reform committee, I'm hearing similarities in their response to an executive president and from both sides of the political divide. And that worries me. I think it's always prefaced on the same thing. Oh, we've looked at these other countries. I think the problem is we've been looking outside from the beginning. We have an alien constitution that came to us from UK. We have been independent long enough now that we must be able to admit and recognize the political culture in this country for its good and its bad. Right? We have a system now where people vote for an MP as a proxy vote for who they want to lead the country and lead the government. And that is how popular prime ministers are able to sweep parliaments with MPs who are not necessarily who their constituents want to vote for. After 60 years, the time has come that we can mark more than one X on a ballot. We can vote for our MP and we can vote for our executive president because we know that is what has happened in the past. When you hear people talk about a dog in a green shirt or a dog in a red shirt can win that seat, that's what it is, because people want their leader. The fact is that the people do not elect the leader of the government. He is elected not even by the parliamentarians, because unless the leader of the political party doesn't sit in the parliament, and even when they do, they come up with a fix for that, an agreement, right? So the head of the government is really chosen by the delegates of the ruling party. And that's what I mean by when are we going to begin to give more power to the people? The political parties have become entrenched, and in reforming the constitution now, they must be willing to divest some power to the people. The political maturity of the people will grow in tandem. So don't look at other countries and say, well, that didn't work over there. That's a different culture. Understand the political culture that we have right now and empower the people every step of the way.
Okay, thank you very much. If there's no follow-up to that, I will go to Donovan, then Dr. Claire, and then you two. Okay, go ahead, Donovan.
Okay. The question I was gonna ask was already asked, so I'm gonna. Dr. Claire, you had asked a question in the chat. Is there another question that you may have? Go ahead, unmute yourself.
Good evening, everyone. I want to thank the Northeast Diaspora chair for convening this meeting. I've been waiting for this for a long time. And I think it's the first of many such conversations that should go beyond conversation. I'm going to work with Stephen and many others. I'd like to start out by just saying, before I ask my question, I'm assuming we're talking in this phase one simply of the issue of the constitutional monarchy, right? I'm not going to tackle everything else. But when I ask the question, what will be different about the way we live our daily lives because we have removed the figurehead? To decolonize the future, to decolonize our country, doesn't only talk about moving a figurehead. We have to decolonize the mind, and as Stephen said, decolonize the future by ensuring what is the future we want. We are in a situation right now where the reason why people don't vote is because they don't have any trust in government. We have a parliament that's just voted itself a 200% increase. An insult to the teachers who have not even been paid because a mistake could not be fixed in the software. And there is a sort of arrogance with which these issues are dealt with when we come to speak to the people. We are hearing that the case that was brought by a diaspora person has no standing. But if we're supplying the social safety net, but we have no standing, our case is thrown out because nobody in Jamaica, we have nothing that is considered investigational journalism. So the third rung of democracy does not work in Jamaica. We have a former minister of government who is suing for back pay, but we're not sure, we don't know where the case is in court for the money he was supposed to have stolen. So how is it we're talking about constitutional reform when I am asking questions like, so where is the money that the Prime Minister got for crimes? We've seen gunmen still running under shooting of cars. It's just too much lack of information for us to have any confidence that changing what is the system where nobody has clearly said moving the Governor General is going to be good for us because it's like you break it down. No legally, you have how much PhD and still don't understand what is going to be different. What is going to be different if we move? Besides, I pledge to the Queen, you said I pledge to the people. What is going to be different if we have this republic? Are we going to have the ability to have whistleblower laws? Can we ever see an MP go to jail? Even Trump has to go to court. Where in Jamaica have you seen that? So my point is, we are not confident that constitutional reform is going to change anything. And so to go back to what Stephen said, we need to be frank and honest in our political culture. Is garrison politics. The strongest people in power are those who preside over entrenched poverty that has lasted the last decades. And Vision 2030 has been totally no vision whatsoever. So our national anthem and our national pledge receive us so much hope and direction. We don't need the preamble. The preamble is in the national anthem and the preamble is in the national pledge. But it's not even being executed. So I would really like to working for me. When I'm an intellectual, I want to understand in English what is going to be different if we change and we support this wholeheartedly because we want to decolonize the past and decolonize the future. Thank you so much for the opportunity. I'm sounding irritated because I'm just so passionate and overcome because I'm really worried about the future of our country. Please help me understand what is going to be different. Thank you very much.
I don't know if I'm expected to respond now or you would like me to wait.
No, go ahead.
Well, I agree with a lot of what Dr. Claire has said, especially at the beginning. But I want to remind her that change does not come by changing a title. That change really reposes in the people. And when the people want change, they act. We have seen all those slave rebellions which took place, which led to the freedom of slaves. And it was not because of the legislation of the time. It was because there was a revolt against the system at the time. There are many things, many opportunities which we have now, which we do not use. The examples which she has given are previous examples. And a lot of us share that view. But if the people do not speak, they cannot be heard. And so the injustices which are being perpetrated constantly against the people will continue because silence empowers people to continue along that same path. There are things which took place. There are human rights abuses every single day in our country. But there are few lone voices speaking out against it. And those who have the power and the authority actually cast a negative narrative against those who are trying to protect the defenseless in this country. And they are empowered by different groups. So all I'm saying is, if we want change, it's not going to be legislated, Dr. Claire. The people who have power are not going to move over and say, take some of the power. The people have to demand accountability. That's what we do when we vote. We have to encourage people to vote. And we have to encourage people who are sincere and who really mean the system at Jamaica some good, who are sincere in their desire to represent, just step up. But the way in which we have cast our representatives, you actually are tarnishing your reputation if you run for public office in Jamaica. But before I end, I have to give a shout out to Donna Bailey, because I see a friend of mine on the chat. Hi, Donahue. That's speaker's privilege, Michelle.
That is fine. That is fine. That is fine. Let me go to a question that was asked.
Michelle, I just wanted to come in,
Okay.
come in as well. Sorry.
Go ahead.
And I actually really appreciate the sentiments as posed by Dr. Claire about the ability to engage in a very down to earth and in layman terms to the people. I think that is critical. So there are steps being taken, and I can speak particularly to the youth. We have an engagement with JAN, the Jamaica Youth Advocacy Network, and a part of what we're doing with them is packaging the information in a youth-friendly way, so that young people can understand. We understand that young people learn in culture. We understand that youth learn in music. We understand that youth learn in sports. And interestingly, I was having a conversation with some students from Group Technical one day, and when we were having the conversation about the role of the Governor General, the reference to the Governor General being like the grandmother, who they get involved sometimes, but the grandmother don't run the house on a day-to-day basis as a mother does. That was something that came out in the conversation, and we saw how readily they understood it because that was familial and that was something that they hadn't experienced on a day-to-day basis. And so when we're having these conversations, we have to be pinpointed in how we engage. Now, as you make mention of, and I heard Stephen speak to it as well, that there is a concern about the role of the people in the process. I think Senator Motley said it well, that the people are the centerpiece. and that is not lost in this process. The challenges, one, there are different levels of awareness already which exist, and so we have to be garnering and bringing up those levels of awareness. So where there are people who are very low in terms of their awareness as to what is taking place, we have to bring them up to speed, and that is one step of the process. I heard about we are looking outwardly too much. No, there are institutions that have worked. There are institutions in the country that have worked very well. There are institutions that have failed us. And so it is an assessment of what has worked and what has not worked. And I don't know about any political action that has been taken without any form of comparative assessment. And Steve, I disagree with you wholeheartedly on that. There has to be a comparative analysis of what exists globally, and we look at our political culture and see what will fit into that political culture after we make that synthesis. Because the truth is, I heard the conversation about gridlock, as was put earlier. And if you think about our political culture, and Stephen put it in the right context, people prefer to have a dog in an orange shirt or a dog in a green shirt than somebody else of a different political color. And when you have that type of political culture that exists, that will lead to a great level of antagonism in the political process. And it's something that, even though it might not be the popular thing to say, it is a reality that does exist in our political culture. And so any assessment of that in the way forward, we must take that into consideration when we're trying to craft the future plans for the country. So yes, to the question about will the people be able to vote in the process as to whether we become a non-executive presidency or not, as Senator Motley said, the matter has to go to the people for approval. If the people don't approve it, then no, it won't take place. So I just wanted to bring that into some context, because I think that is lost as a part of the conversation. That there are issues, yes, with our process, and similarly, as there are good stuff or pros to the U.S. presidential system, there are pros to ours. There are flaws. So it is really a deep assessment as to what can work in our political culture. Yes, we talk about the political maturity happening, but if we try to, in one go, impose what we believe is a panacea in the executive presidency, it might lead to greater challenges down the road. And we're in a developmental stage as a country, and that must be in sharp focus. We have to think about that as well. So as we make the plans, the gradualism approach that is being taken, it is not one to say that we don't appreciate the realities of what exists in a presidential system. We have been assessing from the semi-presidential system. We've looked at the non-executive system. We've looked at one of the purest forms of democracy in Switzerland. So the assessment is not being done in a vacuum or in a singular trajectory. Yes, we are looking at comparative politics and global politics when we're having the conversations at the table. And Steve said that we are, he's afraid that he's hearing members of the committee sounding alike. And you know why? In all our meetings, if you read the minutes again, you'll see that the conversation starts out here, far. People start at one side of the spectrum, people start at another side of the spectrum. And then we debate, we discuss based on what the conversations have been with the communities, with the public, and then we try to find a centerpiece that creates that consensus. And so
Okay.
the committee, yes, Steve.
Pick up it. We know you're a budding politician, long time, but I see the shift in your position here.
I'm a member of the private sector.
Hold on.
You can see that in my future. Thank you very much, Steve.
I see the shift in posture, and when you choose to use words like impose, nobody is talking about impose here. But since we're talking about
but Steve,
comparative system, this is my question.
Let me finish, and then you can make your statement or your question.
No question.
Right. You don't. So what I've been saying is that we have been taking a consensus-driven approach. And so the debate might start on the left and on the right, and then we try to find a center where the members of the committee can come to a point of understanding and a point of agreement based on the deliberations and engagements that we have.
All right. Since we're looking at comparative systems outside, are we doing that also on the issue of the Maroons? I raised this with the minister Minister, and the headlines the next day said, "Pesky response." Are we trying to deal with the fact that in 1962, the British treaty with the Maroons was ignored in the drafting of that constitution? And are we looking at comparative systems in terms of how other nations treat with indigenous groups or indigenous nations, rather than just the aggressive posturing of the Prime Minister about a unitary state, which is the cloak the minister has also taken on? Is this being discussed? Because the Maroons said no one has reached out to them. The minister's response to me was that everybody's being consulted, but she got the political posture too. So give us the frank truth.
Well, I can't speak for the political class. Senator Mottley potentially could. But what I can say is that Lalita Davis Mattis, Dr. Mattis, has been an advocate for the inclusion of them in the process and in the conversations. And so it is something that will have to be given attention from the committee level that has been accepted. And so they will have to be engaged.
Can I interrupt for a second? Because I've had my hand up for a while. I've been skipped over, and I've listened to both you guys talk. But there's a lot more to the Constitution than just what we're looking at, because there's also indigenous people in the U.S. that create their own law and their own governance and their own rules for how they conduct their tribe and how they run their own laws. That's why they have casinos to fund them. They have their own economic structure. They have their own voting rules. They have their own decision of how they run their own people. So we're talking about the Maroons. They're indigenous people that could also make up their own rules and own law and run themselves as indigenous people that have like the federal government fund these indigenous people. The thing is, what we all got to look like is the economic structure, that if we have this new system coming in, what the economic structure is going to look like, what the voting, how are we going to vote, age, how are you going to get the information out there to all these people? Because as you know, here they're dealing with over 300 million people. You're dealing with 200 million people in Jamaica. What's the infrastructure going to look like so you can reach these people to let them know what we're doing and how we're doing it? First of all, you got to create that infrastructure. There's no infrastructure in Jamaica to reach people and how to get them to vote. Are you going to put voting polls out in each community, each area? How are you going to get that information out to let them know what the Constitution is? We're arguing about the Constitution because you know about it. How about getting the information to the people so they can understand? Because from what I'm understanding, a lot of people haven't passed the 6th grade. Some haven't went to high school. Some haven't been there. How are you going to get them to understand all this information? How are you going to lay out purely just to their level so they could understand it? That's the issue that I think we got to get out there so that people could understand it. We could discuss this all night and say, you got to think of the term of the people you're dealing with. And I think that's where the issue is going to come.
I have to respond to that. Okay. When I did my introductory statement, I spoke to the time when I would go to church halls and town halls. And I do think that sometimes we underestimate the ability of the average Jamaican to understand what is taking place. And I think if you listen to the talk shows, it would give you some insight into the wealth of knowledge which the average Jamaican has. When we interact with them, they are very clear about what they want, if only we would take the time. And what I would say is that now at this stage, since we don't have that much time left, I want to invite the diaspora to send some suggestions, especially on how they see the executive presidency working. and how they think that further engagements must take place. I want to remind you that constitutional reform is never static. It is ongoing, and that is one of the changes that we must have in Jamaica, that we don't have the last significant amendment being done in 2011, that we constantly evolve as our people evolve, and the Constitution, which is the supreme law of the country, must also evolve with it. But no, the people have full capacity to understand what is in their best interest. That is my.
So I just want to speak on this a little bit. So Jamaican people are very educated. I'm not sure who said. From I was young, by the way. Aunt Cartman had to teach me how to spell. So with that being said, I had to bring that little patois. So with that being said, Jamaicans are a very educated set of people. What we are, we should not negate the fact that Jamaicans do have a fear of voting. Let's be real. Jamaicans are fearful of voting. Okay, people are fearful that if I vote for this one, vote over here, this party, whatever, there's going to be retaliation. So first, we need to take that fear away from people. We need to bring people to a comfortable level that, you know what, you're going to vote, you have a right to vote, that is your right, and there will be no retaliation. No one is going to do anything to you. Trust me. If you go to the Ann Cartman, the farmer, whoever, whose child is at University of the West Indies, by the way, studying law or medicine or whatever, they'll be able to tell you from the very first time the government was started, who was the first prime minister, where the vote took place, all of that stuff. They'll be able to tell you. So let's not do that. Jamaicans are very, very educated. People are afraid. That's all I can tell you. And people need to know that there are not going to be any retaliation if I vote for a particular party, and so on. I go down to Jamaica, I have to remember not to wear green, not to wear orange, whatever, because it's just ridiculous. We need to inform and educate the people that it is okay to go and vote. That is your right to be a part of your democracy, and so on.
Yes.
All right.
Thank you,
very
Tashany.
much.
Before we go on,
Donovan, before we go that, I'm just, if you don't mind, Donovan, I know we said we're gonna go on to 9 o'clock, but I'm just gonna ask if the panelists can just stay a little bit more because we have a lot more questions to be asked. There are 4 hands. There are Purvis Morrison, there's Andrew Moore, there's Meg Talk, and there's one question that has been lingered from the room all night. And let me go to it right now. Let me see if I can find it. And the person on YouTube was asking, will the people be able to choose their president or mayor? And I just want to make sure that has been answered, and that was asked by Jeffrey Brown. With that said, I am going to, John, why you want me to go to Purvis next?
yes,
And
Purvis, and then Andrea and Meg will talk, and then
okay, in that order. Okay.
yes. Go ahead, Purvis.
And I think, hold on, I do apologize. Community of the Deaf has been waiting because he has a translator. So maybe, Purvis, could you hold a minute and let us have the Community of the Deaf first? Thank you. Is the Community of the Deaf ready?
Ask for the interpreter, Michelle.
I have been. They were on not too long ago. That's why I switched. But then I hear me for one reason. The interpreter is not. Yeah. All right. We'll wait for them again to come on. And then we'll go to Purvis. Purvis, go ahead with your question.
All right, thanks, Michelle, and good evening, everyone. So, before I ask my question, just a little bit of background here. No constitutional amendment is easy. It takes a long time, and it's inherently so that it does take a long time because that's a massive change that impacts people's lives. If you look here in the United States, I looked that up like before I came on. 11,000 constitutional amendments have been proposed, and only 27 to this date has been passed. So just for that context. Now, in terms of moving to from a constitutional monarchy to the president, what is being done at the national level? And I heard Sujae talk about the youth, and that's a great segment. But what is being done on a national level so far to educate the public about pros and cons of moving from a constitutional monarchy to terms of their voting when they come. And secondly, since there are a lot of, it looks like there's a lot of things that people want to tag on into this constitutional amendment. Are we trying to do this constitutional amendment solely for moving from monarchy to presidency? Or are we trying to tag any additional reforms in there? Since constitutional amendment is so hard to be done. So those are my questions.
Sorry, if I can just chime in here, Purvis.
Yes.
Yes. All right. So a number of things, as Senator Motley would have alluded to before, there are different levels of amendments that can take place. So you have the deeply entrenched versus the entrenched. What we've had an issue getting over are really the deeply entrenched versions, and I think she would have outlined what the differences are early and what the necessary steps are for those to be taken. So that's the primary issue there. We've struggled in the past to get consensus as to getting over deep entrenched issues. That's one. And yes, I did speak to the youth engagement issues, but there have been a number of public conversations in communities as well as in the town centers with the people for engagement. I know the legal education unit of the ministry, they're actually going in and speaking to the differences in they're going in and speaking to the differences in what we have now versus what is on the table for the conversation. So that's the second point. And the third point, in response to your question, is that so we are doing it in 3 phases. The first phase is looking at the matters relating to becoming a republic, moving away from the monarchy, etc. And the second phase is looking at the issues relating to like the Charter of fundamental human rights, etc. And then the third phase would be a broad look at the constitutional makeup. So those are the 3 phases that we're looking at.
All right, thank you, Jay. Michelle, we're going to go. I only have one question left, but I want to get the 2, actually 3. Andrea, Jeffrey, and Donna. Andrea, go ahead.
Thank you so much. Good night, everyone. Thanks for this very informative discussion and presentation. I am Andrea Moore in Jamaica. So I thought I'd just clarify it was Tashany, or I'm not sure if I pronounced her name correctly, where she indicated that there is a fair for persons to vote. I would wish to clarify that in my view, there's more of an apathy to persons to vote because they're probably of the view that there's hardly any benefit to do so, as well as that perhaps there's more of victimization if you vote for one party or one candidate and the other party is successful, then they might limit you from any personal benefit, so to speak. So persons just think it's probably better not to get involved. But my more important concern has to do with what I observe as very limited engagement with the public in relation to the committee and the whole matter of the constitutional reform. I've observed that you have different sessions in different parishes, but the persons in the communities are not aware that it is being held until perhaps the same day or the day before. So there is very little participation in terms of the numbers of persons that turn out to these different events. So you might hear that a town hall has been held throughout every parish so far, possibly, but the participation from the roots, the grassroots persons per se, I am of the view it's very limited because the information in terms of even when they're held is a concern. In addition, the transparency of even the committee meetings being held where in a similar way that parliament sessions are held in the public sphere or public viewing, that's something that I'm aware persons have been clamoring for, and that has not happened to date, as well as possibly even being privy to the minutes of these committee meetings. So I think where, as it has been said, that the public is able to participate and it's going to be a situation where the public will be involved, I think that in all fairness to the public, we need to have more of a transparent, a deliberate effort to get people to really be involved, a deliberate effort to get persons' voices to be heard, so that you can say with sincerity that persons from the public are aware and have participated in this process.
Donovan, that's a very fair comment from
Yes, it is.
And I think that I can say without fear of contradiction that that concern has been expressed on the committee as well by most of us, if not all of us. We do believe that our public engagement could be strengthened. We have not, in fact, been to all the parishes. We have not heard from all the people. And we have been disappointed with some of the turnouts which we have had at the town hall meetings. We had, I must tell you, frankly anticipated that more people would participate. What I can say is that in each area that we have been to, we have a sense of what is concerning the public, not just for constitutional reform, but the things which are uppermost in the people's minds. So, for example, Sujae, Portland, you realize that beach access was at the top of everybody's mind. That was their agenda. And it really informed the committee as to some of the other things which we needed to include going forward. I want to also thank you, Andrea, for pointing out that what we are suffering from is voters' apathy, not voters' fear. And to even say that the whole concern about not wearing orange and green and so on is, I don't think it's a live issue anymore. And one of the things that I, who ran to seek become a member of parliament, one of the things that I have viewed and have been so enthused about is that, unlike my days, you will see people in green and people in orange grabbing up, hugging up, and dancing. When before it was
It's 9 o'clock.
One color or the other, you were really attracting a violent act. That has changed. Remember, there was a time when you couldn't even drive a green car or a red car because we were so partisan. Jamaica has come a long way in that regard. And all we need to do is to let the people understand what universal adult suffrage meant when they got that right to vote in November 1944, Sujae. What it was, what it means, and what their forefathers had to do to get that vote. You remember that George William Gordon had to buy land and divide it up so that people could get the right to vote because it was property. You had to be a property owner before you could vote. These are very important things that we have to remind our people about so that they know that a vote is not something to be sold for $5,000. It's a very significant act when you really go to the polls and mark your X. I think that is what is missing in our country.
Now, just to tack on to Senator Motley, I think that was a very balanced representation. If I can call it Andrea. I think that's a very.
You're my interpreter.
Oh, okay. Give us 1 second. Go ahead. Sorry, finish up.
Yeah. I think that was a very balanced contribution. Yes, we have kind of shifted, as Senator Motley said, from that political tribalism that would have existed in communities. Yes, there is still a sense of fear in many of our communities, and that cannot be ignored at all. Where to be representing a different political party is still seen as unpopular, and of course that would have been led due to the clientelism that existed in the past, and that links quite aptly with the spoil system which you referred to, which again that was really seen as being invented in the U.S. Under the presidential system under Andrew Jackson. So we have inherited that here, where the government work, etc., is seen to be given to those who are seen as a part of that political party or supporting that political party. We do have to do more in terms of the community work. We have to get out into the communities. That is something that we have to do and to strengthen the community and the grassroots engagement. As I said, we are doing work in the town centers, but that is simply not enough. We have been having those engagements. We have taken an approach as well where there have been stakeholder-led engagements. So, for example, this one with the Diaspora diasporans. We have had the church leaders making the different forum. We've had Key Club, etc. The Kiwanis, they've been leading in their different spaces to have the engagement. So it has been a multi-sectoral approach and not necessarily just the government-driven process or the CRC-driven process. But we definitely have to do more in terms of getting it at the community grassroots level.
Thank you, Sujae. Okay, so we're gonna go to the community for the deaf, and then Jeffrey, and then Donna. Go ahead, interpreter.
Okay, thank you. Hi, yes. Finally, I'm here. I have everyone's attention. I finally got this to fix. So, okay, so this is Leonid. I'm in deaf myself, and I'm talking to you through an ASL interpreter. That's the voice that you hear. And so finally was able to figure out how to join the meeting. So I'm just really excited to be a part of this and to be involved, with the constitutional reform. I think that's very important. I can see that we've got, 3 lawyers and teams so far with the discussion and the change and the focus that we've had. We all have our human rights, and we've been discussing those things. We have people involved, but I think one thing that we're missing as well is with the DA that needs to be part of the constitutional rights, the parts of the constitutional reform, excuse me. So, looking at all of these things, we have to make sure that involved with the civil rights, that's included, So I'm just looking to see how many other deafs were involved and how many other disabled are here. So we just need to make sure that, we do have power, we do have rights, and we just want to protect those in the Constitution. So how do we do that? And so that is, I think, one thing that has been missing so far, an issue that's been missing regarding those with disabilities. And so I just want to advocate for that, not only for the deaf community, because we have our own struggles in the deaf community. Like on February the 14th of 2022, Jamaica, they passed the law, and I was really excited about that, but I don't think that it has been successful because in Jamaica, people don't know that this law had been passed, and they're like, oh, all right, well, because there wasn't the exposure, there wasn't the explanation of it about, the disabled people with disabilities and their rights. And so even though the law was passed, it was kind of like, oh, okay, moving on. So, you're talking about having to get people involved, and I think that this is one of those issues that we need to make sure that people are involved with, not only with their rights, but, people need to hear our voices too, and so people with disabilities, I think this is great that we're talking about the constitutional reform, but I think we should keep this in mind and get everyone involved, to be able to make those changes. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Sujae, were you going to respond to it? I thought you had your mic off.
Thank you so much for that contribution. I actually closed it by mistake. We have initiated conversations with Kimberly Marriott Blake. So she is the president of the Jamaica. Let me tell you the exact title. So I'm not misquoted. The Jamaica Council for Persons with Disabilities, executive director. So engagements have started. Again, we have to dive deeper and to dive further into those deliberations. So yes, it is something that is high on the order for us as the CRC.
Thank you, Sujae. And of course, let's not forget Andrew Sharp is an advocate for people with disabilities here as well. So thank you guys so much. All right, we're going to go to Jeffrey, who's going live on Facebook. Jeffrey, go ahead, sir.
Good evening or good night, everyone. Councillor Andrea Moore and Senator Donna Scott-Mottley, good evening. The question I have is this. A statement and a question. A lot of Jamaicans have never seen a copy of the Jamaican Constitution, much as to read the Jamaican Constitution. And yet we are talking about constitutional reform. And when will the Constitutional Committee elect a member of the Jamaican Diaspora to be on the committee? Those are some questions that is running through the mind of everyone. And for me, who literally just moved to the United States, I have been asking that question. When will somebody from the diaspora sit on the Constitutional Reform Committee. We're going out there, we're talking about Constitution. Are we teaching the Jamaican Constitution in our schools for people to understand the meaning of constitutional reform? Maybe somebody can answer me on that one, and maybe ask a stupid question, I don't know, but maybe somebody can answer me on that one.
So, of course, Jeffrey, you're always spot on. There are many, many Jamaicans, and not at every level, who have never seen a copy of the Constitution. In fact, one highly educated friend of mine told me that she thought it was tomes and tomes of black law books. The Constitution is actually a very small document, but a highly complex one. Some criticism has been made of the number of lawyers on the committee, but I can tell you this Constitution, as it has presently been framed, is you could go through every clause. 3 cases, meaning King's Council, because that's what we have moved from Queen's Council to King's Council, could pour over the same clause and have 3 different opinions. And I think one of the first things that we have to ensure is that when we do this new Constitution, it is in simple language, which is easily understood by all. Because at the forefront of legislators' mind should be the fact that the Constitution is a document for the people. So yes, I completely agree with you there. It should not be a subject which should be reserved for persons who study law. When I was at law school, I hated constitutional law because the professor that we had only seemed to make it more complicated than it was. And I resented the fact that I shouldn't have to have a professor talk to me about my Constitution. My Constitution is something that I should just take up and understand. There's a lot of work to be done, Jeffrey, in all areas. And we're relying on people like you to assist us in doing the work, because that is what the only way that we can succeed if everybody comes on board. So I want to thank you for those observations. I don't know if Sujae has anything to add.
Senator, what about a member of the Jamaican diaspora? You have any idea if that's going? Will that ever happen?
There is a proposal which actually was made after I had a meeting with some folks in the diaspora for one of the subcommittees to involve people from the diaspora so that we can get their inputs.
Mm-hmm.
Because a very important consideration, which we are going to have to make recommendations on, is can people with dual citizenship participate in the governance structure of our country? I don't know how many of you will recall that action was brought against some members of parliament in, I think it was 2000, and Andrew has to remind me which election, but one of the provisions in the Constitution is that you cannot swear allegiance to a foreign country.
Mm-hmm.
And how the Constitution defines it is that foreign country is any country which is not a member of the Commonwealth. So those of you who live in the United States would automatically be disqualified. Whereas, as I said, somebody from Rwanda or Switzerland or Australia could actually hold office here in Jamaica. So one of the things that we have to agree on
Mm-hmm.
is how can persons with dual citizenship participate in representational politics in our country. And I think that the input must come from the people in the diaspora who will understand all the issues that confront them, why they need to be citizens while still serving their country. So I think what I can promise you is that at the next meeting of the committee, which will be on not this week, we normally have them weekly, but this week we are not, this coming week we are not having one, that I will raise again the issue of the subcommittee, which will facilitate participation by the diaspora. Another proposal which has come, Jeffrey, is whether or not we can have senators from the diaspora. And that too has to be on the table, but it's best informed by people who actually live in the diaspora. How will they attend? Who will pay for their attendance? All sorts of questions which we have to contemplate.
And Senator, before you go, if the moderator may permit me, could you say if the committee will come to members of the diocese to have a town hall meeting with them?
Well, I do know that the minister has had a town hall meeting with people in London. And my understanding is that there will be other town hall meetings in which she will participate. And I believe that other members of the committee will be invited to join her. The members of the committee have been meeting with different groups. And again, it just brings me to the point where I have to thank you for facilitating this consultation, which we are having now. It has been very informative to both Sujae and myself. And we will take it back to the committee.
Okay, Senator, thanks very much. Moderator?
Oh, Michelle, we have one more before we go to iPhone. Donna, you. Go ahead, Mr. Bailey.
Thank you very much, Donovan. Madam Chair, Michelle, Neil, Tulloch, or I should say Tulloch-Neil, panelists, my very good friend and attorney, Donna Scott-Mottley, and colleagues on the call. Well-timed, well-deserved topic. And lots of things has come out tonight, but one of my questions, I have three questions, but let me just pose one. Senator Mottley, is there a master plan that has been put in place for what has been accomplished in reference to the laws associated to the Constitution, the plans associated to where we're going, that's calendar-wise in reference to when are we going to tackle those particular laws, and the end game in reference to when we're looking to become leaving the crown. Is that in place? And would that essentially help?
The short answer is no. When the committee started its work, the committee, one of the terms of reference was really to examine what the 1995 Joint Select Committee report had proposed and to see its relevance and its validity now in this new environment. When the discourse started, Donahue, the first thing is that we realized that things that that committee had to fight over, and come to consensus about were still very, very significant. I explained that the PNP at the time wanted an executive presidency. They wanted to vote for president. The JLP did not want an executive presidency. They wanted a non-executive presidency. And in order to really compromise, the PNP gave up its position and joined with the JLP and said, okay, we will go for a non-executive presidency. So when the committee actually thought that it was moving forward from a position of consensus, the people have said, no, that is not, we are to make no assumptions. And so the consultations and the discussions which are taking place have really curtailed any movement to rush to put the bill before the parliament. Because the people have to be educated, the people have to be listened to, and their points of view have to be taken into account. So I would say that the process of consultation is still continuing in various stakeholder meetings, that it needs to be in fact strengthened. And that is what prevents anybody from giving a timeline at this time. So we hope it is soon. I had articulated my position from early. I don't want it to be in an environment where we have an election. So, you know, then everybody sort of takes a position, stays in their corner, and we can't move forward. But the truth of it, Donahue, is that no, we cannot give a time.
And this will continue if we do not timeline the situation, because Barbados
You're muted.
Sorry. Barbados had to do it to get to where they are today. Trinidad also had to do it to get to where they are today. And I think the goalpost will continue moving based upon all the concerns from the community if we do not put things in place pertaining to what are the prime issues that needs to be looked at before we can conclude or reform. And may I recommend that the committee essentially begin to put that in place, because there are many young people who do not know what happened in the 40s. And I can tell you this, that Barbados used what came out of Jamaica in the 80s to get to where they are today. So we need to put something in place to get there.
Well, Donovan, you should, Donna Hugh, I'm sorry, you should know that I'm intimately familiar with the Barbadian process, right?
Yes, yes.
And it's slightly different there because somehow the partisanship doesn't block the progress that I know. For example, they were able to just join the Caribbean Court of Justice and complete that process very early in. They were one of the first persons. We are still arguing over it, about whether we should leave the Privy Council. So they do have a different approach to some of the issues.
And I think the context is a bit different as well, because if you look at the opposition in Barbados, the opposition is really, at least the modern opposition is a bit non-existent in the sense that.
But at the time when they went to the Caribbean Court of Justice.
No, I was just speaking of. I was speaking in reference to this.
Well, Sujae, if you have a prime minister who can capture the imagination of the entire
everybody,
country,
right? But they too. I mean, and they too, because I did go attend a training session with members of the different constituent committees across the region, and they too have had feedback, negative feedback about your process, because unlike our process that requires the people to be a part of it, theirs did not. And
that is
that is something that we have to take into consideration as well.
Oh yes, and I prefer our system actually, although it means that the process is longer.
Right.
I like the fact that the people have a say. I really do.
And I will close with this two items. One is do we need to take a look at prioritizing what is it that the community and the public is looking for, all right? And how we're going to address it, number one. Last but not least, voting. Andrew Moore mentioned about the voting situation in Jamaica. I have driven around the island and I talked to these people on the street. And many of them are reluctant to go out and vote the next election. And, Senator Mottley, you raised the issue of what happened in Portland. And essentially, somehow or the other, the same sort of situation is occurring, but it's not giving some persons something tangible. It is only giving them something that is a feel-good mechanism at the time, such as some dollars to go vote here, there, and so on. Maybe I shouldn't have said that in public, but it's good. But yes, but is there the balloting system in Jamaica right now? It is not that secretive and where only you alone knows who you voted for. Can we do something to better or differentiate that system in Jamaica in reference to voting? I mean, everybody get their fingers in the ink, yeah, no problem. But many persons know who vote for who. And if we could work on that, that's another issue to move to reform. Thank you. And I'll turn my mic off and listen to the response.
This is one that I'd like to pass on. I actually think that we have a very secure system of voting in Jamaica. The influences are there. The most popular one now, as I understand it, is that people are prevented from coming out in the sense that they are induced to stay home and not come to vote. I can't help myself with wanting to have a different kind of country and a country where more and more people participate. Maybe it's my idealism where still at this age, I'm still trying to evoke that kind of response from the people. I should be in retirement, but I want to see a different Jamaica. I really want to be part of the transformation of this country. And one of the only ways we can transform it is then when our people understand what kind of responsibility they have when they vote. I think I have to leave it to people like Sujae and to people, some of those young persons you have in the diaspora now, to go out and convince them how much it means the right to vote and how much it can ensure that the trajectory of our nation is on a particular path, you know. So I really don't know how to answer you, Donna. That's just the truth.
Senator, you don't believe that by giving the people more choices would reinvigorate the voting process? I mean, if we reform the Constitution and it's the same old go and we've swapped the Governor General for a ceremonial president that's not even on a ballot, that vote the apathy might continue.
Stephen,
this could be one way of re-energizing the electoral process, resulting in what you are seeking right now.
I think if we have, as you know, other political parties stepping up and swaying the vote, the voters are looking for alternatives. The people are looking for alternatives. And the hesitancy is not just on the part of the people, it's on the part of people who offer themselves for office. You have been active for many years as a Garveyite. You and I have worked together on Liberty Hall and other projects. So you understand what it is that you need to offer the people alternatives in terms of a different kind of representation, a different kind of political party with different offerings. But people are reluctant to do so. I think that is where change can come.
Having an executive president might offer a road for that also, because we know the bipartisan system has become very entrenched in political culture.
But
and therefore,
I'm sorry.
I had posed a question in the chat saying, what if a Usain Bolt wanted to run for president, wanted to run for head of state? By the system we have right now, he would have to become the leader of one of the political parties. But if you give the people the choice of voting for an executive president while voting for their MP, it may just open the door for someone. It won't be anybody. We know politics takes money and machine. But it may be a candidate who would be able to win that office and not be aligned to any political party. Yes, this is what I'm saying. Give the people more options and the democracy will flourish and political maturity will increase.
I don't think it's as easy as that or as straightforward as that, because you might have Usain Bolt. Forgive me, Mr. Bolt, for using your name in this context. You might have Usain Bolt running for president and winning, but there might be a dissonance in terms of how he governs. You understand? Because respectfully, Stephen, it is time that we understand that it's not just popularity that should guide how we vote, that it has to be also a philosophy. So let's just pause and look a little bit at what happens in Guyana. Because in Guyana, the political parties actually have a slate. And even if the person does not belong to their party, they will say to the country, if we win, this is who we are going to have as president. Would you find that attractive?
I think governance shouldn't rest on the executive alone. I also don't think that members of parliament should serve as ministers in a cabinet also, and that we should reverse the old colonial way of the upper house oversight in the lower house. And with MPs now focusing on legislating and governing their constituencies, they would become the oversight body for the upper house, which would allow for a president to appoint his cabinet members as senators, alongside a slate of elected senators, I believe also one from each parish. So I'm talking about diversifying political political system in a way where you could check those issues that you might argue for now in terms of having a president who is from a different political party and a parliament that is controlled by another party, right?
Yes, and that those proposals have actually come forward. You have to also bear in mind that it would the entire architecture, entire infrastructure of our government would also change.
Can't be afraid of reform.
Pardon me?
We can't be afraid of reform.
No, but you have to make a decision about how you're going to approach it. Constitutional reform is a dynamic process. It continues constantly. But you also have to, it also has to be balanced, because if you're going to accommodate far-reaching changes, then you might not be able to achieve anything that you want. And as Sujae says, in a way, the gradualism can work.
Gradualism in terms of giving power to the people, because that's really what I am arguing for.
No, but the people have the power. The people have the power, but they don't utilize it. And what I would say is that people need to be encouraged to utilize the power which they have. That vote is the most powerful thing that people have.
They have a.
Could 1 minute, please? 1 minute, please. I
They
know
have
that. Hold on, Steve. Give me 1 minute. There is iPhone that has had their hand up for about 20 minutes. And so we really, really need. I will try and come back to you. I did ask for 10 minutes, and it's now 9:30. So for that thought, Stephen, and because some of the speakers have to go, panelists have to go as well. But I do want to hear what iPhone has to say. So hold your question a minute. We'll have constitutional reform part 2. All right. Thank you very much, iPhone, for waiting. Please unmute and go ahead and ask the question. And thanks again for your patience, iPhone.
I appreciate the opportunity to just speak, and I just sincerely want to thank the group for this debate. I've been listening, and I somewhat agree with everybody in some respects, and in some respects I also disagree. But here's my question. I'm calling you from Chicago. I'm online. Pastor Barrows. Sorry, I came up as iPhone. I was rushing to get it. So, but the question is, what are the perceived benefits or advantage that this group sees in a republic over the monarch? As what is our real motive for debating the issues of this constitutional change to this kind of governance? Is there a benefit that we see in a republic over the monarch while we're pushing to go in that direction?
So when I remember our slave past, and I remember how we were treated, there are studies that have been done to show that the slaves that were brought to the Caribbean and Jamaica in particular were brutally treated, were dehumanized. Some of the problems which presently confront us are legacies of that slave past. The having a man says, I get a child. We were never encouraged to become parents. We were encouraged to become breeders. The brutality, which has been demonstrated even now in our schools, where there's a fierceness and a ferocity about how we solve conflict, are inextricably linked for me to our slave past. And every time that I think of the fact that we still have to glorify these people who treated us the way that they did, it makes me feel that we have not really come a long way from looking up to the white man as our savior and our master. Even with our court decisions, the fact that we still hang on to the Privy Council in desperation, it seems to me. Even though we're the only country that needs a visa to go and see our monarch or leader or head of state and to access our final court of appeal, there is something about it that makes me feel diminished. You know what I mean? And there are some intangibles. There are some things that you can't really speak to, Pastor. But the same kind of way that we feel when we see 3 Olympians standing on that podium and we glorify the fact that Jamaica has done it again. It's the same sort of thing that I think must lead us into this different kind of nationhood, which is an acknowledgement that we have the capacity to have one of our own occupying the highest position possible in our country. That's what a head of state is. We can select whether we vote for that person or we agree on that person. That sense that we have done it, that we can acknowledge that we have the capacity to lead in this way, that we don't have to look to a representative of King Charles to hold our highest office. It's something that I think it might seem like I can't tell you you're going to make more money, or you're going to get more tourists, or you're going to have more bridges or more cars. But to me, that stirring of emotion, that feeling of pride is something that we can't pay for. So might be I'm being idealistic, might be I'm being sentimental, but it means a lot to me. I totally finally crossed this Rubicon. It's a Rubicon.
Scott, I agree to a great extent as to what you just said. But in reality, though, think of it in this particular if a foreigner brutalized us, or we experienced hardship at the hand of an external force, or we experienced hardship from an internal source, the fact is, on either of them would have experienced hardship. Be honest, I understand the notion or the desire to pull away from those who were classified or considered or oppressors. But if we have considered and taken a look at even what is happening in the United States, where I currently reside, the presidency and the system of governance through a republic is no significant difference, but it's not significantly different from the monarch either. When you consider the history of America and the indigenous folks whom they displaced to build this great country, and consider also that this same republic brought slaves to this very land to help to build it and treat us with the same disregard that we face with needing a visa to go to our motherland. And you know, it really does not. There's no significant difference in my mind, other than that. Yes, we were because we were under the hand of the British, and they were classified the oppressors, and you know, then you know, I think this needs real careful thought. And yes, I'm happy that it's being debated, but um, I really think we have so far to go before this decision. Um, we come to a conclusion on the matter. But I understand the logic behind the debate, and I'm listening intently and with great interest. And I support your view. We don't want to be ruled by an oppressor. But
on another occasion, Pastor.
Yes,
on another occasion, because it is now way past time we'd agreed. You have to tell me what you think we're gaining from remaining with King Charles as our king and with the Privy Council as our final court. You have to explain that to me. You see, you're asking me to justify why we should leave, and I want you to justify why we should stay. But we have to do it another time, Pastor.
I like that question. I get it. I love that question, and I'm going to answer it on my next on the opportunity I have in the next debate.
So,
all right,
Madam
Thank
Chair, Mrs. Tulloch-Neil, that's a promise, because I want to hear. And I want everybody who says we should remain, tell me what we gain from remaining.
Thank you for saying that, Senator. I think you give me an idea for what this topic will be. Oh my God, too.
Michelle, can I ask a question?
Sure.
No. It's to the pastor. It's not a question. It's to the pastor. Pastor.
Yes, sir.
We have iPhone 15. How do you reach iPhone 19? More on that miracle.
Hold on. I will tell you in the next debate.
But Chair and your wonderful audience, I really thank you for accommodating this discussion. It has been so engaging. It has been very interesting. And all I will say is don't let another month pass before we have part 2.
Okay. Oh boy. Oh, the pressure is on. Okay, thank you so much.
Let me just give my thanks as well while we're at testing on Pastor Bailey. I was quite intrigued by your line of thinking, and I think that there is some seasoning behind it. And I do see Stephen Bowling in the chat commenting as well. But this was really a great exercise, and I think that was quite useful for all participants.
I appreciate the comments.
Thank you guys for tuning in to us, and it's very good to see the diaspora engaging. A lot of people had a lot of information. I was reading it in the chat, so people are informed. What we do want is to have people play more of a part. Again, as I said, in processes like this, conduct your own town halls, inform your family members, and so on. But just keep the conversation going. You don't have to wait on like the diaspora rep or someone to put together a forum for you to be involved, because you guys know what's up, you do understand. So just inform each other, inform your family members, your community, however way, your church. Let people, we all can play a part in our democracy. So let's all do it in the way, whichever way is comfortable for us. But again, thank you guys for tuning in to us. I enjoyed my panelists. Healthy debates. I learned from you guys. And I'm going to do the work too to make sure I get more informed, because as much as I did the research and background information that I know, I've learned a lot from Sujae, from Senator Scott-Mottley, from the attorney Karen Wilson. So it's one teach the other. Let's all participate.
Okay. Where is she? I think she had to go. Okay. Yeah, I think
she's still there.
She's still there? Oh, there she is.
Unmute, Karen. Unmute.
Which Karen? Is it me?
Wilson, yes.
No, Wilson.
No, Wilson Robinson.
No, it's your twin, Karen. This indeed was a spirited discussion. I too learned a lot because I do come from, I echo what the senator says. It was the worst class ever in law school. It's such tense material. So while there's some cause for concern that our committees is heavily stacked with attorneys, there's a reason for that. Because it's a dense document that needs a lot of parsing through in order for you to accomplish anything. And to have, laypersons being tasked with looking at this language might not be the best use of our time and resources. But nonetheless, this is a great discussion. Learned a lot. I'm happy to have been asked to be a part of this. I'm looking forward to part 2 as to the why. I can definitely see how that would also be a spirited discussion. But thanks again for inviting me. I'm definitely happy to have participated.
Thank you. Okay. There's a community of their hands are up. I don't know if the interpreter wanted to say something or
and I'm going to keep a lot of this in the back of my mind. And you know, like I said, I'm going to continue to. It can be sometimes be a challenge to communicate, but I have learned a lot, and I think it's been a healthy conversation. And I will keep a lot of this in the back of my mind. There was one thing that Tashana, I'm pronouncing it wrong. The family and getting them again. So please, please invite the the disabled community. You know, let them know, let them have that exposure, let them be involved with the Constitution, because that is very important for us as well. So, you know, we just want to make sure that we have them be aware so that they can also spread the word in their community with their people. So we have, you know, our community as well. So we have similar trials, but you know, to be able to have the exposure, because the deaf community and the hearing community, yes, we're connected, but you know, and we do need to see that change. You know, we need to roll up our sleeves and get involved and get more people connected with this constitutional discussion. And so, but thank you again for letting me speak.
Okay. Make we talk, Jeff Tavares, you have 2 seconds.
Yes. Ladies and gentlemen, on this noble platform, just want to remind you or say this to you that come tomorrow at 7 p.m. on the Make We Talk Jeffrey Tavares YouTube channel, we'll be having a discussion on Haiti, the way forward with Haiti. We're going to have our guest, Herb Nelson Jr., and a professor, oh my God, I forget her name. But tomorrow we'll be having a robust discussion on the way forward with Haiti. You know, Haiti is our neighbor, so we have to have a discussion pertaining to that. So join me tomorrow on the Make We Talk Jeffrey Tavares YouTube channel. Remember to like, share, and subscribe. Thank you all very much.
You're welcome. Okay. So all right, go ahead, Donna.
Dr. Dunkley. I just saw Dr. Dunkley. How you doing, Dr. Dunkley? Thought I was calling her earlier. Just want to recognize Dr. Dunkley, our former head. And Michelle, like I said.
Thank you, Donovan. Thank you. Good night, everyone.
You're welcome, Doc. Like I said, Michelle, you have had a couple of forums, and they all need part 2 and 3 and 4. So you're gonna have to put your headgear on and get this one going as soon as possible. But thank each and every one of you for joining us tonight. And Michelle, thank you for having me. And we will continue to do our best. So with you, madam, goes out and take it in your hand.
Okay. Thank you. First, thank you, Senator Donna Scott-Mottley. Thank you so much for when I called and you were like, yes, I'll be there. Thank you to Shauna from the beginning that you were like, you're on it. Sujae, thank you so much. Karen, thank you so much for coming on, and I do appreciate it. And I do want to thank each and every person for being here. It was a diverse representation tonight, which is why the conversation is spirited. And as the senator said, I have to bring this back within 1 month, so that means it's December. And I'm going to try and do my best to make sure we keep it going. But again, thank you all. It's something that, as Tashany says, we need to talk about it within our various groups to keep this conversation going. So when the committee has a meeting and they're ready to hear from us, we already have this conversation and know exactly A, B, C, and D. This is what we want to be considered. So thank you all very much and have a good night. By the way, next week, Wednesday, we will be having our governance forum, and Dr. Dunkley is actually one of our panelists next Wednesday. So please come on and listen again. That will be 7 p.m. Hopefully by 9 p.m. Governance next Wednesday. I know it's not happening. Thank you all and have a good night. Godspeed.
Good night.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night.